Greetings and salutations. Welcome to A Kind of Funny Reacts. My name is Colin Moriarty. This is the illustrious and very handsome Nick Scarpino.
Hi, Colin.
Nick, I wanted to talk to you about something today that resonated, I think, with both of us in different ways in our respective kind of passion industries. And by that, I mean you kind of with movies and me kind of with games.
Yes.
Recently, of course, Super Troopers 2 was well overfunded on Indiegogo, a movie that maybe the major studios wouldn't want to touch. And then more recently in gaming, Igavania's, or I should say Koji Igarashi's Igavania Castlevania spiritual successor, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, received $1.5 million in 24 hours from the user base. And Ukulele, which is from Playtonic, who are the guys that used to do a lot of the guys from the old Rare studio in the 90s, before Microsoft basically gobbled them up and ruined them, are getting over $2 million so far for their 3D spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie. And I want to talk to you a little bit about where crowdfunding stands today, because people are kind of souring a little bit on crowdfunding, but these projects come out every so often that kind of revitalize where everyone stands.
Right.
And so I'm curious where you think Kickstarter and Indiegogo and even Patreon exists right now within this ecosystem, and what you're excited about from it, and what you think the future of crowdfunding will be.
I mean, it's hard because you only ever see the sort of successes, right? Like, no one really, unless you're really, really into the crowdfunding game, and I'm definitely not, you're not going out there and cataloging every time someone asks for $10,000 only gets $200. Notable successes I have in my brain right now are, of course, Super Troopers that asked for, I think, $2 million, and they're at $4.4 million. Famously, Rooster Teeth launched their Indiegogo, and I think they ended up topping out at like $2.4 million. And I don't think they wanted even half. I think they only wanted like either $500,000 or $1 million or something like that. And then, of course, there's my fan favorites like Kung Fury that they wanted $200,000. They got like $500,000. Those are the successes. I don't know overall how the industry is going. However, I do think that it is the future. I think that the studio system, in regards to movies, does not like taking risks because they have shareholders and they have a bottom line. And so when you have to basically pay back your investors, you have to do the safe bet. And what you end up getting then is you get a whole bunch of superhero movies, right? You get a whole bunch of Hunger Game movies. And I'm not saying these are bad. I'm just saying that if you look at these movies in general, there's zero risk to making another Harry Potter film. Zero. You're going to make your money back. There's zero risk in making a Star Wars film. You're going to make your money back. But if you want to make something like an indie film like Drive, or something really weird that you can't even pitch to someone, you just have to kind of go out there and make it. That's where you have to build your audience and go out there and tap into that and say, look, I'm going to do this experimental thing. Please come on this ride with me and help me fund this, because no one else will do it. And if you want to see this come to life, this is the only way it can happen.
Yeah, I think the risk aversion obviously is shown in multiple industries, because you're talking about getting your superhero movies, for instance, and we're going to get those in droves until they run it into the ground. It's the same way we get Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty and all of these kinds of games, for the most part, in the AAA space in gaming. And what really surprised me about Igavania specifically, and Koji Igarashi's approach to Igavania and to Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, is that he went to something like 24 publishers who all turned him down.
This is wild.
And it seems so...
Now, is that because... Now, let's back up for a second. Why would they turn him down? Was it because the last Castlevania just underperformed?
Well, I mean, his Castlevanias did perform. I mean, in our interview, you guys can check out on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, we did a 90-minute interview with Koji Igarashi. What he was saying was that the games were all profitable, but maybe not profitable enough for a big company like Konami.
Right.
And so he would go to publishers with his agent, Ben Judd, and they would basically be told, no one wants to make an Igavania game, or we can't make money on an Igavania game. And to them, I don't think necessarily making a profit is making money. To them, they want to make as much from their capital investment as possible. And that's natural for a business to want to do. But what's extraordinary to me is that these games are going to be made significantly cheaper than they probably will be made at a publisher, because there's less overhead. And I'm using on my phone right now Ukulele from Playtonic. They were only asking for $270,000. They're getting $2.4 million so far, with 35 days to go, right? The same thing with Igavania, Ritual of the Night. He's almost at $1.6 million right now as we're recording this. He was only asking for $500,000.
Oh, and he'll be well beyond that as of the time we even post this, I would imagine.
Indeed, and his situation is different because he's basically trying to prove to in-place investors that there's a demand for this game. But I kind of wanted to discuss this because my own opinions on Kickstarter have radically changed, I think, over the last year or so, because I do feel like the system can be quite predatory. And somewhat unnecessary. When Veronica Mars is being pitched, for instance, Veronica Mars is established. The people that made Veronica Mars are well-known people. They could probably find investors or even use their own money, but they chose to go in a different direction. But when you're going to get a game like Mighty Number 9 from a guy like Keiji Inafune, who is otherwise going to be somewhat unpublishable, especially in the Japanese scene that he's somewhat scorned, well, this game wouldn't exist at all. And when we start getting games like Shovel Knight and then Mighty Number 9, and now we're getting Ritual of the Night, well, these games clearly wouldn't exist without Kickstarter. And so my initial reaction to Kickstarter, while it was a gut instinct and while I think it was somewhat partially correct, was painted with too broad of a stroke. Because there's things coming out of this ecosystem that I think matter and that are relevant and that are good and that would not exist if it wasn't for this platform.
And I think there's a lot of that sort of traditional mentality when you come to these things, right? Where you look at a brand new platform, and for all intents and purposes, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and especially Patreon are very, very new players in the marketplace as far as funding is concerned. And your first instinct is to go, oh, they're going to fail. This is not going to work because it's such a radically new thing. It's a new way of developing these projects. And I was with you too, where there's a fair amount of sort of like trepidation looking at these when you're like, how dare these guys? How dare these guys just go out there and ask for free money? And it's not really free money because you'd have to kind of you have to do all your perks and things like that for it. And then you have to actually go out and make the product, which is true as well. But it's hard. You have to kind of get past that and think, how much can people accomplish on these platforms, right? And you're talking about Shovel Knight, like for instance, it's a game I just started playing, which I didn't even realize was crowdfunded.
Yep.
And thank God that is, because I've spent the last like 5 nights playing it, right? And it's a great game. But I mean, I guarantee those guys aren't going to have problems. Actually, maybe they will have. That's the thing. Will they have problems getting the next one made? Or will they have to go back to the crowd one more time?
I don't know. I think like when you have a success story like theirs, which I think is a more moderate success story, they made a lot of money, but those games also sold well. They're totally fine.
Right.
They kind of, and this is what I'm proud of with Koji Igarashi, is that like they can kind of snub the traditional publishing model now and just be like, you know what, guys, like you can kind of go fuck yourselves. Like,
right.
We don't need your money. We don't want your money. And we made our game and we're successful by removing that initial barrier to begin with. Now, some people like Keiji Inafune look at it a little bit differently, where Deep Silver is now involved, which is an established North American publisher and European publisher, getting involved in, kind of marketing and publishing Mighty Number 9 long after they got their $4.5 million from crowdfunding, which to me is a little fucked up because there's no investment and there's no risk on Deep Silver's part. So that, again, you have to take everything in a case-by-case basis, and I'm excited about Mighty Number 9. I am disappointed that Deep Silver is publishing it. Not because I don't think good people don't work at Deep Silver. There's good people there, of course. Or not because Deep Silver can't provide a service, because they can, but because they're not really necessary. Because this was funded from the grassroots, and now it is no longer a grassroots product.
It's hard though. I mean, it's one of those things too, where you look at a movie like Laser Team, right? And to make the movie is such a monumental effort just to get it done. Distributing it is a whole different story, and that's not something that you can get a lot of hands-on experience doing if you're running it, especially a new media company, right? Where your main platform for distribution is generally just upload it to our channel or to the YouTube channel and hit publish. Whereas we're talking about something that has the potential for making millions of dollars if done correctly. So if I were to crowdfund something of that nature, yeah, I would want a partner that understands the distribution game, because that hasn't changed that step necessarily. Theaters are starting to die as far as movies are concerned, but digital distribution is is insane right now, and that's where a lot of the profit margins are coming from. So I don't know. It's easy to say, look, you've got all this money, you should be able to get the game done soup to nuts and get it in my hands for that $4 million. But there's a fair amount of sort of I guess there's a fair amount of sort of expertise that goes into that you probably just don't have. So I can't fault him for that, but I can. It is hard though, because I mean, what are you getting for that value? Well, you're getting the game for free, right? Like once you Kickstarter, they are getting
you're getting the game,
right?
and maybe you're getting other items as well.
You're probably getting some other items, so at least you're getting the game, right?
Yeah.
Whereas some of the movies that are coming out, you're not even able to see the movie. Like you're not getting an advanced copy of the stuff. You have to still go see it in theaters. So it's a little different.
Yeah, I mean, I have 2 closing observations about the trends right now in crowdfunding. You can agree or disagree, and I'm curious what everyone out there thinks as well. You can let us know in the comments. One is that I kind of thought crowdfunding was waning. And not so much on some platforms, but more on like Kickstarter, which was really the one that started the revolution. What I think is more happening there is that people aren't kickstarting everything anymore.
Right.
Games are starting to fail on Kickstarter. Things that would have certainly, like, when they were trying to make Eternal Darkness's spiritual successor, for instance, they tried twice and failed both times on Kickstarter. But if that had come out around the time Double Fine was using it, it probably would have fared differently. So I think people are being more selective, and they're waiting for the truly great games or the seemingly great games, such as Mighty Number 9 or Ritual of the Night, to be like, yes, we'll fund this. And not only will we fund it, we will overfund it many, many times.
Yeah.
Or the same thing, obviously, with Yooka-Laylee. So that's my one observation. My other observation is I'm super interested on how Patreon deals with this, because we haven't really seen it for game development en masse yet. I think there is one game developer on there that does things by updates.
Right.
But
well, it's hard to wrap your... Sorry, continue.
I was just going to say, no one has tried to say, like, listen, we want to have a Patreon instead of a Kickstarter and Indiegogo for our video game. We want to be supported monthly for 2.5 years or 3 years to make this game. You get the game at the end. No one has tried that yet. I actually think it's going to be super useful and interesting. That might be the next wave of small indie games being made via Patreon, as opposed to the lump sum payments on Kickstarter, especially because Patreon takes way less money than Kickstarter.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Patreon was founded for, though. Like, the way we use Patreon is not necessarily how they intended it, although I'm sure they're happy to have people use the platform any way that they deem necessary, so long as it's, you know, successful for them. But that is the whole concept of Patreon. It was supposed to be for artists. But specifically, it was started by a musician who wanted, you know, Jack, I think, wanted, if I remember correctly, to be able to sort of give artists the ability to kind of fund albums as they were coming out. So every time a new song would come out, you know, you would be able to fund that. And I think that they had gaming in mind as well. If not, they certainly do after our amazing Patreon party that we threw.
Yes.
And streaming 3 days out of GDC and kind of introducing everyone to the platform that we love. Because I stand by Patreon. We use it more of a subscription model, which is more like a Netflix or an HBO style model, which I think works as well too.
Absolutely.
And that's the other thing too, is the reason why I think crowdfunding is not going to go away is because less and less people are stopping to think about it as crowdfunding. More and more they're thinking about it along the same lines as a Hulu Plus membership or a Netflix membership or an HBO Go membership. They're just thinking, oh, I'm going to fund this thing and it's going to come to me a little later. No, because honestly, people, I think, have turned a corner and realize, yeah, there's still going to be a lot of illegally downloading people's content or watching content for free wherever you can get it. But I think also this next generation of content consumers really, really, really wants to sort of align themselves with the brands they love and help them out while they're still digitally downloading everything else and kind of, you know, getting everything for free. At least I hope so. I mean, I think that we're in a sort of a brave new era with all that.
Yeah. So I just wanted to touch on those issues, and
Awesome.
yeah, I'm super interested to see where this all goes. Things wax and wane all the time on the internet in this digital age. So what's cool 1 minute isn't cool the next minute, and then it's cool the next minute after that. And I think that's kind of where we are with Kickstarter. It's almost like Kickstarter 2.0 or crowdfunding 2.0, where it's not everything getting funded now. Now it's the really important or essential products.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's very, very true. Well, that was a good discussion, Colin. As you know, this episode was brought to you by Audible.com. We were sponsored this week. So allow us to give you a little bit of messaging from our lovely sponsor, Audible.com. Audible, of course, you can get over 180,000 audiobooks to your liking. If you go to audible.com/kindoffunny, you can get a free book and start a 30-day trial membership. So audible.com/kindoffunny. You can read books like, I'm thinking of actually downloading the book you always recommend for me, which is Walter Isaacson's Steve Jobs, The Autobiography.
Yes.
You said over and over again that I should read that.
Yeah.
I don't read. So listening to the book probably is a better way to enjoy it.
Listening is good. The biography is an excellent book, and
I like to
excellent
sit there
read.
when I make sauce, shirtless.
Yeah.
And I like to stir it like this, and I like to just listen to stuff.
You just like to keep your ears open?
I keep my ears open, and I keep my ears to the ground or in headphones, and I just stir the sauce.
That's perfect.
I stir the sauce. Anyway, go to audible.com/kindoffunny, and thanks so much for watching, guys. Colin, take us out.
That's it.
That's it.
YouTube.com/kindoffunny. More reacts coming soon, I'm sure. Also, youtube.com/kindoffunnygames if you like our game-centric content, specifically Let's Plays, all that kind of good stuff. Till next time, bye.